loyalty described as, do you care? And I care, and that's why I'm on this show. Comes a time, here we go.
I'm a sucker for O'Teal, man. I saw that same feeling that I have, that would he filled a void that I didn't even know existed.
It feels so good, too, as Ben said, to try to do something about an issue as opposed to complaining.
If you can't help, don't hurt.
If we could just all get out there and throw cream puffs at each other, maybe things would, instead of bullets and angry words, it would be better.
When you stop laughing, you stop living.
There's a worldwide surge in interest in mushrooms.
It was deep, man.
It's not that TM makes your mind quiet down there. It already is. We're just stuck up here. We've lost access.
Jumpin' Jack Flash came out by the Stones. So I thought, all right, perfect, man. I'm gonna drive, and I started driving through the neighborhood, and I got a text from Mick Jagger.
People saying that, you know, what we do is non-essential. Well, playing those few gigs that you saw me at felt pretty essential to me.
It wasn't like they were clapping from here. It was they were clapping from here.
My view of things is that death is the last and best reward for a life well lived.
Like it's the strangest of places if you look at it right, you know?
If you're liking what you're hearing, head on over to patreon.com/comesatimepod and get your bus pass for an extra episode every week.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Comes the Time. That's my pal O'Teal.
And that's my pal Mike, whichever side he happens to be on.
We had a great one today. We had Ted Alexandro, one of my favorite people, one of my favorite comedians. Honored to know him. Happy to have him on. He joined us, and I knew right away. There were so many things I was like excited for you guys to talk about and us to all talk about, and yeah, we dove right in. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah, we sure did. We got right to it.
Yeah, we did.
It was a super fast hour, which I love. You know, I can see the little clock here on the side of my computer. I was like, whoa, that much time has passed already? It's super great. I can't wait to see the special the Teachers Lounge. I guess it was a series he said he did.
Yeah,
on
he
YouTube?
did a series. He's done a bunch of incredible specials, and he did a series called Teachers Lounge where he explains it here in the episode. But yeah, you can find all of it. And he did this play recently, which is the thing that I love about Ted is that he's game for cool shit, you know. Like I had a show a while back with a 4-piece jazz band that I hosted called Codename, and we did it at this place called the Creek in the Cave, which was like this awesome room that the owner kind of like set it up for us to just work stuff out. There were specials filmed. There was like it was like a mecca for comedy of all levels, you know. Someone doing their first open mic to someone recording like popping in and working out their hour, and Colin Quinn working out his stuff. Just a brilliant place. And Rebecca was always so open to having us do cool ideas and cool shows. And myself and a 4-piece jazz band did this show called Codename, and they were huge comedy fans. And it wasn't like just them hanging in the background playing, like jamming. They played their songs, and I would invite comics to come up, and the band would bring the volume from like a 9 to like a 3 when the comic would get up and do their set, you know, and they would play back and forth with each other, and it was so much fun. And I had Ted on, and I remember he like found out the name of one of their songs, and he just started to riff on the name of the song, and almost kind of just like poetry, like improv poetry, created a set that had to do with the name of the song. And it was just like, that's the shit. He puts his heart and soul into whatever he does, and it's evident. And I just, it's so great to watch him. I've learned a lot from him.
He's got a beautiful mind, for sure. This is one of my favorite podcasts. It went quick.
Yeah, it really did. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And you could check out all of Ted's stuff at tedalexandro.com. Thank you, Ted, for joining us. We are on Osiris Network, home to so many great podcasts. You can go to osirispod.com. And if you're liking what you're hearing, you could join us at patreon.com/comesatimepod for a bonus episode each week. So thank you guys very much for joining, and we will see you in the future. you had a little bit of a bout of something too, huh? Coming off the road.
Yeah. Our tour manager had it, and then I got it from him. So it was like a week, and then my wife, and then our 2 kids. So yeah, it was the circle of hell for a bit, but we're good now.
I got sick right when I came home. Did a whole summer tour, perfect score, never got COVID.
Yeah.
We had 22 people on our tour get it.
Wow.
I mean, it's 100 people crew. I guess I can say that now. It was a big secret then, but I came home. My kids got me sick. Not COVID, but it's just been a week of, coughing and spitting. I'm learning Yiddish, as Billy Crystal would say.
You got a good schwitz going?
Oh, massive.
Oh, yeah.
How's everything going, Teddy? You doing good? It's great to see you.
It's great to see you too, buddy. Yeah, things are good, man. It was a month off from touring with Jim Gaffigan, who, as you know, I opened for the last, I guess, 6 years or so. So he's been doing a movie. So during that time, I did a play. A couple comedians wrote a play and reached out to me to play a slave owner named Racist. And I said, I don't know why you're calling me, but I'll read the script. It's so funny. The script, it's called Race, the Movie, the Play. So it's kind of a satirical mashup of all of the Hollywood race bait movies like Green Book and Driving Miss Daisy and Hidden Figures. And so it's kind of taking the piss out of all these kind of, like the precious, over the top white savior films. In fact, the lead character's name is Wyatt Savior. So in the month of June, I was doing that play at the New York Theater Festival, and it was so fun to collaborate. Teal, you know the feeling of that, but as comedians, it's a little more rare for us. Yeah. It had been a while since I acted, especially stage acting. So it was great, man. It was great to be part of something. And I had a meaty role, I was the villain essentially. So as you might expect,
racist.
Yeah. Racist and my wife, ovarian.
Amazing.
So it wound up winning Best Script in the New York Theater Festival, and
nice.
Our lead actor won Best Actor. So yeah, it's 3 sold out shows. So they're trying to parlay that into like an off-Broadway run, and these are like young, tenacious guys. So I'm hoping that they can, I've left the tenacious years behind, but they're knocking on every door, which is great.
That's fantastic, Ted. Congratulations. Did you act on stage? Did you do stage acting prior? Like, was that a part of your coming up?
That was kind of my entree to just getting into a life in the arts. Like in my teenage years, there was a community center at our church that had the usual musicals that you would expect: Grease, West Side Story, all these types of, Damn Yankees. But I was really taken by it as 12, 13-year-old. And I was like, how do I get to be part, it was like my neighbor, who was the lead. And I was like, how do you get to do that? It's like, you just show up basically. So I started showing up, and the first couple of years I was in the stage crew, and then I started auditioning and getting into the cast, so that really was, I did 10 years between say like age 13 and, probably 25 actually, where I was doing all sorts of, primarily musicals, a few comedies and straight plays in there as well. But musicals were the easiest to kind of track down and get involved with.
It's funny because I didn't really think about the fact that comedians don't get to play together. But I think back to all these movies where all of my favorite comedians did a movie together, and I'm like, wow, that's why they did that, so they could all work together at the same time, Yeah,
I think sometimes
go ahead.
Sometimes it's about the hang, right? Just like doing a project together and having that time together, which is so rare.
But you also getting to do this thing about race, because I had a thing at the very beginning of the pandemic, a friend of mine that's really into theater. I said, man, I want to do Blazing Saddles on live, and I want to be the Deputy Spade. You know?
Yeah.
And for a minute there, we were really like talking about doing it, and I kind of pulled back from it. And I still wonder if it's undoable nowadays. But this project that you just talked about kind of gives me a little bit of hope again. I'm like, because it's also a dangerous thing to do nowadays, you know?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think the audience was really like appreciative of like a treatment of the topics, because it is, I mean, Blazing Saddles was a definite reference point for the writers. And the opening voiceover in the beginning of the play would say, this play is written by a white guy, boo, and a black guy, yay. Well, half. So, I mean, nothing was like off limits, and they kind of went right at every potential kind of landmine. And honestly, I really think the audiences appreciated it, because the cast members, we had a text chain, and people would say like, oh, my wife really loved it, and we talked about it over dinner, or my whole family was there, and like we couldn't stop talking about it. So even though it is a silly comedy and over the top, it has a heart to it as well. And yeah, I was appreciative to be part of something where I think that, there is so much talk about race, and so much of it is dire, obviously. So that like people need that release and that permission. And I think also sitting in an audience that is mixed, because we know this very well with comedy, Mike, like people almost like look peripherally for permission.
Can I laugh?
Can I laugh at this? Yeah. So the fact that it was like a mixed audience and it was getting big laughs, I think it was cathartic for some people.
I think so maybe cool. January 6th just ripped the Band-Aid off.
Right.
And now we can be like, okay, we got to talk about it. Let's joke about it also.
Right.
But in joking about it, like, Blazing Saddles it goes hard.
Of course.
Like so
it does,
hard you can't even do it nowadays.
Yeah.
So it's cool because it makes conversations. If only because you were like, man, you got it. That was funny. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, it was cool to be part of, and it was interesting to see as a participant the effect that it had on crowds, and the different nights of it too. As you guys well know, you're doing the same material each night, but how one thing might hit one night, or depending on the makeup of the crowd, even it might hit differently. But to see the way these, like I said, these two young guys, these two young comedians, probably like about 30 or so, the way that they wrote this, with the intention of doing a comedy and slapstick and satire and over the top. But also it does have those moments, which I think are important, of heart and kind of bringing people together. So it was cool to see it hit the target.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I want to see that.
I hope we have the opportunity,
That's
man.
so cool that they're hitting the streets trying to get it to be an off-Broadway thing. And I have to imagine coming out of, you mentioned something earlier that I think is super important. I think, Oteil, we may have even talked about this, about how, you go on the road, comics look at musicians and we're envious because you get to travel with your buddies. And we think it's like, God, here we are alone in a hotel again for 4 or 5 days. But then there's that whole thing of like, well, yeah, we're traveling with these guys, but there are fights and infighting and whatever, so it had to be nice coming out of the, so much solitary that we've had, Ted, to like be able to work with people and interact and integrate. And that's a good way to kind of ease back into performing out, that was a hard thing coming out of this.
Yeah. And as comedians too, I think, you're so used to being the center of attention and kind of, when you're headlining shows, especially that, they're there to see you and you're the, like whatever, like people are asking, how are you coming backstage? Do you need this? Do you need that? So it was nice to just be part of the ensemble. And like some of the other actors didn't even like know that I was a comedian or whatever. And, not that it's like, don't you know who I am? But it's nice when people like are just dealing with you as like, oh, nice to meet you. You know what I mean? And you're building relationships. And then I also would find out who they were, very accomplished actors, or we had a drag queen in the cast who was also very accomplished. So all these different people coming from different worlds. So that was cool too, that it wasn't, obviously I love the comedy world. I love my fellow comedians, but it was a nice kind of change of pace.
Mix up. Yeah.
For sure. And, I do have the best of both worlds that when I travel with Jim, we're such good friends. We've known each other over 20 years. So it's a good hang. It's a fun hang. And our tour manager too now has been with us for probably, 7 or 8 years. So the three of us are kind of the band in a sense of going to dinner together, hanging, all that stuff. So I have that. I have my own gigs. And then, like I said, the theater thing was a good change of pace.
I love Jim Gaffigan, man. Now that I have young kids, 4 and 7, and so much stuff is like, well, you can't watch that. You can't watch. It's nice to actually be able to watch some comedy. I know I can leave it up, leave the sound up.
It's funny how many times I hear people say that. Yeah.
It's a real thing. Like there's friends that I can't have over my house anymore because they'll say the same MF in front of their own grandmother, their own kids. But I'm like, it can't, I can't. And I haven't even told them. I'm just like, wow, I literally can't have you over my house anymore because you can't stop.
Right.
It's and I never thought about it either. God, so I apologize to whoever's kids I was around until I was 50.
Hey man, I'm in the same boat. I'm 53 and I've got a 2.5-year-old son and a I guess maybe 15-month-old daughter. So yeah, all these things that you never considered before, and all of that stuff is one of them. My son is walking around saying "damn it" now, and I'm the guilty part.
Yeah. Wait till he starts seeing memes that you can't. My son said something the other day, and I don't even want to say what it was. And my wife was like, and I was like, it was a meme. He saw, I guess YouTube has some live memes.
Yeah.
They're like, he doesn't know what it means. Thank God. We're like, you can't say that anymore. And I can't explain to you why. Because your little brain can't take it.
I remember that first smack across the mouth when I was a kid, when I came running into the house and repeated something a kid said on the street and just, and it was like, whoa, what the hell is that? I just said what I heard. And no. Can't say that in this house.
Yeah. But so-and-so said it. Well, I don't know who his mom and daddy are.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't smack them. Yeah. I can smack you.
I can't smack them. Well, this brings me to something that I didn't even know I wanted to talk to you about, but I'm having a hard time with the young kids, like, talking about race, school shooting. My wife is white. We adopted a little girl from India. So we're like all around in our house.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to talk about race or school shootings. Like, I don't want to talk to him about school shootings. He has nightmares over SpongeBob. We had to cut out SpongeBob. I don't want him it's like, what a weird time we live in, huh? How do I negotiate?
Yeah. Yeah.
Talking about mass murder of children in their school to my first grade, second grade.
Yeah. I've often said, I really don't think it's hyperbole to say I think this generation does have it hardest in terms of having to process all this stuff, because there's also the 24-hour news cycle. There's social media. So they're aware of all these things, even if it's peripherally, but oftentimes it's not even peripheral. It's like the school is having some sort of ceremony for this or that, or remembrance for this or that. It's like
we're studying the climate. It's like, oh yeah. When mom dies, this place is going to look like Mars. Sorry.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy? I know.
Yeah. It robs them of just that carefree time of running in the house and saying a curse word. And that was the biggest problem. That was the biggest problem they had, right? A slap in the mouth for that. But yeah, I mean, it's serious. It's heavy stuff for kids to have to grapple with. So I really do feel for, especially kids that are coming of age during this time, because we all had our escape, whether it was music or comedy or sports or whatever it might be. But yeah, it just seems like there's a heaviness to what these kids have to grapple with.
And the parents like having to feel like, I feel sorry for them for that. They're not sorry about it yet. They don't know. Like I'm like, wow, how do I tell them? It's a lot for everybody to grapple with,
What are you guys doing? Because my kids are not really at the age yet where we have to have, those kinds of conversations, but I guess it's not too far down.
That's the question. What's the age now in 2022? So I don't know, but we didn't shy away from the race one because it's Trump and all this stuff, Nigel would see. So I had to get into politics a little with him and a lot into race because he just thinks it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
He's like, so black people, like you couldn't swim at the beach with me? I was like, nope. Actually, you couldn't be, period. Yeah. Because it was illegal for me and your mom to get married. And, and then so fortunately, they have little children's books about Martin Luther King and Gandhi and, the civil rights era and blah, blah. So we walked through it. And when we finally just laid it all on the table, he goes, well, that's dumb. Because he knows me. He's like, I have my white family and my black family. He doesn't really think of
family.
It. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
He's like, well, that's dumb. And he walked off. And I was like, he's right. Okay, so we're good.
Yeah, he actually got
the mass murder thing, I'm like,
Yeah. He got to the core of the issue pretty quick, though. He said that's dumb.
Oh yeah,
that pretty much nails it.
You know what? It's interesting to hear too. Like you're trying to think of how to have the conversation, right? And that's so important because I remember seeing pictures of like parents at like a school meeting screaming about whatever, the changing of a mascot or the or like the mask mandate thing, and you see this parent and like the picture just captures them like pointing and screaming, and then they're holding their kid, and the kid is crying because the parent's crying, and it's like they could feel that anger.
Right.
So there's a whole other side of that coin that like an opposite conversation's being had.
Right. I wonder when the first mascot with a mask will come out. That'll be very contested.
The mascot.
Yeah, the mascot.
Oh God, that's
a lot of protests. around that one.
The N95s are playing the surgicals today.
The surgicals, yeah.
Well, since we got into race and we got into school shootings, mass murder and politics, let's go for religion because I know Mike told me you have this view on Catholicism. Well, it's funny because like I was raised, and my parents were raised Catholic. It was a very bad experience. Mm-hmm. I was raised against, religion. It's all bullshit, right? Then I had a mystical experience that changed me. I ended up 180 degrees becoming a theology nut. Though I do not go to church, I don't consider myself any denomination. The funny thing about Catholicism is I feel like it's it would be the last denomination I would want to join, but my favorite writers, I think 3 out of my top 5 are Catholic. So there's a little
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
They were not Catholic. They were Orthodox Jews.
That's a good point.
Right. That's why I want to talk about this because I think there's like a baby in there that you can't even see because the bathwater is so dirty, know? And so I, as someone who obviously grew up in that experience, and Mike said you have a great bit about it, which I have not seen yet, but I was like, let's just talk about it because I think it's fun. I got no skin in the game. Like,
it's It is fascinating. I have a bunch of bits about Catholicism and well, I mean, I don't know the one you're referring to. You might be referring to the Jesus abs, Jesus having great abs.
I mean, there's a ton of them. Our producer Eric was the one that mentioned that you had a particular one that he loved. There are a bunch. I mean, you talk about religion quite a bit, and it's. But the thing that I like about what you do, Ted, is that like you bring us on a story, like a path through your life while in your bits. You know what I mean? And that's the part that I really appreciate in what you do. You being the Godfather is one of my favorite.
The Godfather bit.
Yeah, the Godfather bit.
I
love that. It's amazing.
Well,
go ahead.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I mean that one. Anyone who's sat in church, either for a baptism or even like Easter, where you renew your vows or whatever. So the bit is, I talk about my brother and his wife asking me to be godfather to their son. And I didn't know what that entailed. So they, turns out they call you up on the altar during the ceremony. They just start firing questions at you. Like, do you reject Satan?
I think so.
I do. Yeah. And all his works. I'm not familiar with all his works, but I'm not a fan, So just the absurdity of like the language that you sit and listen to, I mean, and if anyone who's been to church even once, you have that experience of like, are we really just going to sit here and like, did you hear what I just heard? So church is great for that kind of stuff.
When you were growing up, was church kind of like where people went before they went out to dinner to like be seen by like in the neighborhood kind of? Was that a thing? That's kind of how I pictured it when I was younger. Like I looked around and everyone was kind of just doing like, hey, what's up? Hey, they're here. See you at the pizza place later kind of thing.
It definitely was an element of that, of being seen, and the social element and maybe the social credit. I mean, I do feel fortunate, like in terms of my own family, like my parents were more on the kind of radical side. Like my mother was always advocating for women priests and
like
priests.
Liberation theology.
Yeah. She in fact had her master's her master's in theology and studied world religions and, but she was very committed to like an inclusivity in the church and kind of breaking down a lot of these old barriers. And, this is the 70s, 80s when I was
lucky for her, she couldn't get skinned alive and burned at the stake for it anymore.
That's right. Yeah. So she was, I mean, I remember we walked out of many a Sunday service because the priest said something offensive about, about women or about abortion or about whatever, that she was like, all right, we're out of here. And so we and I'm one of 5. So like, you can't miss like 7 people.
Partridge family walking out.
Yeah. We didn't all have to go to the bathroom at the same time.
Well, I'm sure she was on their radar.
For sure.
Yeah, she's one of those.
For sure she was. Yeah.
That's awesome. So she wasn't there just to go through the motions. She was paying attention.
Yeah. And so definitely that, I think that is my core of my value system. And, I no longer go to church or really identify, like you said, Oteil, as Catholic, but I am very fascinated by theology, by philosophy, by just basic values of what animates you as a person, and communications, ways of communicating lovingly, which doesn't always mean passively either. Sometimes it means getting in someone's face and saying, hold on a second, I disagree, or here, have you considered this? So I think, and really that's at the core of, I think, so much of the society now, right, is because communication is combat. It's really not
That's
about.
That's why I want to talk about. Yeah.
It's not about love or about listening. It's about winning and mic drops and, embarrassing someone.
Because there are hard things, like we don't, like abortion, for instance, I'm against abortion, but it's because I'm responsible for one. I'm not against making other people not be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about anybody else.
Right.
But for me, it happened when I was a teenager, and it weighs on me. It's like I committed a murder. In my heart, I feel like I ended a life, and it was my own child. That's heavy, man. Like, come on. I should be allowed to feel like I'm not down with that. Because inside, internally, I can't even help it. Like, I'm not down with it. My solution is don't get, so the solution for me is birth control, which is also, on the other side, like that's a no too. But I'm like, I am pro-choice for sure, but I understand why people, we're talking about when does a life begin? This is a very serious question. You can't just like tell these people, oh, you're full of shit, because they're grappling with the same thing I'm grappling with on the inside.
But aren't you glad you didn't have a kid as a teenager?
Well, it wasn't my decision, number one.
Oh, okay.
I supported, which is why I'm saying, I wasn't going to be like, you can't do this or blah, blah, blah.
Right.
I do think, and maybe the kid would have gotten adopted as I've adopted, I don't know. You know what I mean? All I know is inside. So all that to say, I'm trying to get back to what you're saying about where we have to be able to talk to each other and be able to disagree. And you can't just say someone's like, even if you're a racist, fine. You stay over there and I'll stay over here. We're good, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the fact that you also bring up more nuance than most people do with regard to the issue, right? It's usually murderer or fuck you or whatever, but the fact that you're talking about your own journey and saying, for me, this is what I went through, and it stays with me. But also recognizing that it is a choice and an individual's choice. And let's face it, a woman's choice, first and foremost,
Yes,
absolutely.
Period. For me.
Yeah. Same.
Of course. And you bring up a good point though, about how learning to, like Ted, you said something about how being able to say to someone like, listen, maybe just consider this other view. Let me turn this 20 degrees and just look at it from a different, or turn that channel off. And just and
that's a big part of it.
But that movement, that attempting to, sometimes will just shut large percentages of people's friends, family, whatever, just out, and they go, I don't want to hear this shit. I see it how I see it, and it is what it is. And I feel like that has become a pandemic in itself, coming out of all of this. That it's just everyone seems to be like, I don't have time for your. Like it's like you said, it's right, wrong, mic drop, and that's it. And that's tragic.
Yeah, it is too bad. But the reality is you also don't have to talk to everybody, you can feel out this is really going to go nowhere. And the person is kind of intractable and there's no need to even discuss it really, even if you don't have an agenda, I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything, but it's like, we're comedians, we're in the arts. It's like, it's fun to talk about shit, but not for some people. Yeah. They don't want to engage in even like the exercise of let's explore this. And like you said, consider this. And if you mean that genuinely, then it should be the opening to like an interesting conversation.
Yeah, it's just hard when sometimes that's also family.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Oftentimes.
But it is often, right? And it just is what, and I just have to be like, well, hey, it is what it, sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you do? Like, I can't, it's like weeding a garden. I'm trying to build, we have a very short time here. And this garden is going to endure, storms and floods and whatever. Yeah. I'm trying to keep this thing thriving here, and I only got a little bit of time. Sorry, I can't deal with you,
Well, yeah, and also I think kind of what we were talking about, the foundation of love and respect. So even if you do differ, and maybe differ fundamentally on something, I think you should still be able, especially family, you should be able to arrive at a place, well, we disagree on this, but we love each other, we're family, and let's proceed. And, maybe you just have certain boundaries around certain things. But it is hard because sometimes it winds up being a fork in the road, because some people want to make it absolute and put white hats on some people and black hats on other people, and who's the villain and who's, but I do think maybe that is a byproduct of kind of, again, the 24-hour news cycle and this packaging of what debate looks like and what conversation looks like. It's kind of we're bombarded with that conversation and debate looks like, like that word owning, right? Like you see that so much on clickbait, like owning this, which I find, I tried to write a bit about that. I find using the word owning
really makes me nervous.
Yeah. With our history, like, is that the best choice?
That's true.
Or so-and-so destroys, even like sites that I follow.
Yeah.
Like I love the news side. I don't watch any corporate news anymore because it's corporate. So there's one thing that I follow with someone was with MSNBC and got fired for calling out the Obama administration. The other one was with Fox, got fired for calling out that side, and they made their own thing together on YouTube. And even then, I'll see like, it's just the headline. So-and-so destroys so-and-so. And I'm just like, God, you two, like, I know you got to get the click, but come on.
What's up, everybody? This is Mike, and today's show is sponsored by Sunset Lake CBD, a Vermont hemp farm crafting affordable CBD products designed to help with stress and sleep without breaking the bank.
Sunset Lake CBD is a majority employee-owned hemp farm located just outside of one of our favorite places, Burlington, Vermont. For years, Sunset Lake was a dairy farm producing milk for Ben & Jerry's ice cream. We had them on the podcast. In 2019, they diversified and started growing hemp for CBD.
And Sunset Lake CBD crafts products with hemp grown on their family farm and ships them directly to the customer, cutting out all the cost associated with getting on the shelves at stores. They have CBD products for every occasion and offer tinctures, salves, edibles, coffee, smokables, and even for that anxious dog of yours, they have pet products.
Ooh, I need to get some for my dog that's barking all the time. But I'll tell you this, I use these. The Sour Bears.
So good.
They are CBD gummies. I literally, no joke, I take these every night. They help me sleep. And it's almost bedtime.
Yep. And I still, as said it before, I'll say it again. You go to a long show, you come home, my 42-year-old ankles are not what they used to be. And I rub that salve all over them and put them up, enjoy a nice cocktail, and just let it ooze right into those sore bones. And you know what, folks? All you Comes a Time fans, if you check them out at sunsetlakecbd.com and use promo code TIME, T-I-M-E, you'll get 20% off all products. That's sunsetlakecbd.com. Use promo code TIME, 20% off all products. Sunset Lake CBD, farmer-owned, Vermont-grown. Thank you.
Get you some. I'm trying to just reverse my thinking. So Mike heard me use it one time. I was like, man, killed two birds with one stone. So I'm like, I could feed two birds with one worm. So I just throw it out there every once in a while. And people go like, because it is always like, man, that's the shit. That was killing. That was the bomb. You destroyed that. You crushed it. You know, I'm just murdered. Like, whatever. Yeah, you were murdered. And I'm like, why do we do that? It's weird.
Yeah, that's so much of the language around comedy, right, Mike?
Yeah.
I mean, it's You killed, you murdered, you destroyed.
And if you do bad, I died up there.
I died, yeah.
So you can, either way, it's bad.
It's just, it literally is.
There will be a body count.
It could be one, could be.
Right.
You recently did a show, the Julian Assange event that you did. Can you talk about that a little bit?
God bless you for that, man. I love it.
Thanks.
Just bringing him up gets me in trouble. I'm like, where have we come to? Like, oh my God.
Yeah. I felt lucky to be part of that. That was Lee Camp put that together with a bunch of people.
He's hardcore.
Yeah, Lee's great, and so he reached out and said, would you be willing to be part of this Julian Assange benefit show to call attention to what's going on and everything? And his hearing was coming up at that time. So I said, yeah, of course, man. And I live up in Connecticut now, as you know, Mike. So I'm, 2.5 hours from the city. So I'm pretty picky about what I say yes to, going back. So the only other show that I had done was I did Radio City with Jim Gaffigan, and this was the second one. I'm like, yeah, Julian Assange, I'll go back for that too. So I went and I drove down, and as I'm driving, I get a text from Lee. Roger Waters and Cornel West have been added to the show. And so I'm thinking this is just going to be like a, kind of a little low rent comedy show at a small theater. And Roger Waters and Cornel West, two guys who I love, who are all about it. So I'm like, I'm thinking in my head, like, oh, okay, are they going to be like zooming in? Cause this is kind of at that time where it's still, like pandemic-y. But I get to the theater and I go backstage and I walk right past Roger Waters and Cornel West and shake hands. And it was hilarious too, because maybe 10 minutes later, they were asking all of the people on the show to tweet out the link for the live. It was being live streamed. And Roger Waters couldn't figure, he's like, I don't know how, he's like, does anyone know how to do Twitter? And I like basically tackled him I'm like, yeah, I know how to do it. So he just handed me his phone, and I did take the opportunity I retweeted it from my account onto his account. And then I posted it.
Small price to pay.
Yeah, small price to pay. He'll never know. And then I did a second time from his account. But man, what a great night. And also, it was such a great lineup. And then at the end, I was supposed to go on before Roger Waters and Cornel West, but they were running late. So they're like, Ted, we're going to have you go on last, and we're going to put up Roger Waters and then Cornel West.
You got to follow Cornel.
I got to follow Cornel West on the heels of Roger Waters. I'm like, okay, great.
Wow.
So I'm thinking that A, the room's going to be dead. B, those guys are going to leave. So you kind of, it's like, at least I would like them to see what I do and, be aware of me. So I'm like, great that, they're going to cut out. But wouldn't you know it, they do their thing. Roger Waters debuted a song, played it on piano, which he said he had never done publicly before. He played piano and debuted the song that he had written, which was beautiful. And then Cornel West goes up and, does his thing and like gets the room, at a fever pitch. So actually it worked out well, because then I came out. And it was funny because you know how you use moments, right, Mike? Like the MC said, Ted was very gracious and he was supposed to go earlier, but he graciously said that Roger Waters and so then of course when I went out, I was like, I don't know what he's talking about. I said, when he asked me, I said, that's bullshit. I'm going on now. I don't care who's on the show. I go where you told me. So, you kind of just use those little things. Yeah. But what was cool, man, was I had met Cornel West at Occupy Wall Street like 10 years prior. And, I had actually done a bit about that 10 years ago. So I got to kind of do the bit where like I had a sign that said, if only the war on poverty were a real war, then we'd actually be putting money into it. So I had that sign that I wrote up on the back of a pizza box. So he walked up and I said, would you want to hold my sign? And he said, you've tried the rest, now try the best. And I said, no, flip it over. So that was kind of the joke of it. And so I got to do that in front of him, man. So it was like this full circle moment of,
awesome.
Like some gigs where you get asked to be part of it. it just feels like service. Like, yeah, I'm there. What do you need me to do? And to amplify Julian Assange and his message and what he's going through. That was a gig, right there at the top of the list in 30 years.
Amen, dude. Next time they do one of those, will you please call me?
Oh man, I'll tweet it out from Roger Waters' phone. I'll tell you that much. If you follow Roger Waters, you'll find
Gilmore. Maybe
I'm not on Twitter, but man, I would give anything to meet Cornel West. Like literally anything.
It was so great because not only did they stay, and they were sitting front row. So I'm doing the gig, and you know how it is with certain things. Oteil, I'm sure you've had the same thing where heroes are in the room, and you're well aware of where they're situated. It's like you're still doing a show, but your radar is very attuned to they're sitting right there. So I could see them. I could see them laughing, kind of hitting each other at times. So it's like I'm killing with Roger Waters and Cornel West. And then after the gig, we all went to a bar together. So it was just like the people on the show, maybe 10 people, went to this little bar around the corner, having drinks with Roger Waters, Cornel West. We must have stayed there for like 3 hours, just having conversations, man. It was one of those where you're almost like, is this real? Is this a real situation?
Pinch me, man.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I saw that and I was like, God, good for you. That's just so incredible.
And also the fact that they had seen me perform. That's always key, right, Mike?
Yeah,
like, Oteil, like if they haven't seen you perform, or even if you're just on the bill, it's like whatever. But if they saw you, they enjoyed you, then they're talking to you like a peer or like a person.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the whole performing in front of your heroes and stuff. I mean, we've had that since, you work at the Cellar and it's who walks into the room, who's sitting in the audience, it's just unbelievable sometimes. And it's just, and we did a show together not that long ago with Dave Attell.
That's
who
right.
I know we both look up to as a hero, and so many times opening for him on the road and just knowing he's standing in the curtains watching, and I'm just like, he's the only one. I'm looking at the crowd, but I kind of want to just go like, Dave, I hope you're liking this.
It's funny you mentioned, that was such a great night. That was actually my first night performing after the pandemic. That was my first show back, and Dave had reached out, and that was so fun. I was so glad that you were on it too. It was just like, it was the right way to return to the stage, Yeah. But it's funny you mentioned him specifically because when I was a young comedian, maybe, gosh, I don't know, let's say less than 10 years in, maybe 6, 7, I was working at the old Boston Comedy Club on West 3rd. That was at what was that on? It was West 3rd and Thompson or whatever. Right. So Dave came up to me after a show and said, "Hey man, you want to come downstairs and get a drink?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." So I went down, and it was just the two of us at the bar. He's like, "I wanted to tell you how much I really like what you're doing, and you have your own voice." And it like those moments where someone that you have that much respect for, like he's like the king of New York, takes the time to say, "Hey, come on down, let's go grab a drink," and tells you that he likes what you're doing. Man, that's, that was all I needed to keep going for the next 5 years,
Yeah.
It's funny because I wouldn't picture him being that kind of guy from the character,
He's so sweet.
Sweetheart, yeah.
Not to pull the curtain, but he's the sweetest guy in the world.
To circle back to your Billy Crystal, he's a mensch. He's a total mensch. He's a sweetheart and
selfless.
Very selfless, and really wants to uplift other comedians.
Yeah, he had a show for a while on Comedy Central, I think, right, live from the Village Underground, and he essentially he doesn't need to take the spotlight. He's happy to put the spotlight on everybody else. Use his name for however he can help other people, and he asked me to go and open for him on the road a good amount of times. And those, Ted, how there's those moments where when you're on stage and you actually can enjoy it for a minute
Yeah.
Those few and far between ones where it's kind of like, it reminds me of like the closing credits of the Wonder Years when it's like you can hear the acoustic guitar playing over that slow-mo pan of like the neighborhood. And, you know, I had a moment like that with Dave, and it was at the Wilbur Theater when I was opening for him, and I got a good pop, and there was a nice laugh and applause break, and I kind of like looked over and I saw him kind of, his shoulder sort of going up and that wisp of smoke going up, and I was like, Dave's laughing, they're laughing. I'm like, this is the great, like, remember this, please remember this, you know, because it was just one of those like you said, and it still stands out as one of like the top moments because it's like you're making your guy laugh, you know, and where we work, you know, I mean, it's just, we're surrounded by the great Colin Quinn and Norton and all the best. They're there all the time, and it's just.
I went on a Patrice O'Neill, Colin Quinn thing. Actually, it came up in the algorithm, and it just was like. Just like new, you know, just like the first time I heard it.
That's a guy I wish was still. I mean, there's so many I wish was still around, but God, Patrice now.
Yeah. Can you imagine, like, Patrice? This is what kills me about so many like music, everything. Imagine Patrice at like Red Fox's age, you know, like the old, where he's just like. There's so much
Who cares?
loaded in there.
I mean,
that just like
he was already at that like that level, you know, like not caring. Yeah.
Did you
but
check
it's like,
out?
you know, Carlin kept going. You know, he just got more and more. Like, imagine if Patrice did what Carlin did to be like almost unbearable. The truth, you know.
Yeah. There would be nowhere to hide. But I think, you know, it's true what you say about like Attell too, because he's almost at that Rickles level of like when he takes a shot at you too, like, and makes fun of you or like just throws a one-liner. Like as a comedian, you just don't, you relish like him acknowledging you, like when he does it on stage, you know,
right?
Because the gig that we did, he called the comedians back up. So all three of us who had opened went back up, and you kind of riff, and it's just so fun to be like, because that's his domain and that's his world. So it's fun to be up there with him.
It's funny you say that too, because, you know, like for people who are listening who maybe don't know a ton about, you know, the stand-up world or whatever, like, you know, when a comic is headlining, your closing thing is the big, you know, like that's your, you know, you want to close with a bang and whatever. And Dave literally says, let's bring out the rest of the, so he gives up the closing to bring us out and show us love and play around with the crowd. And that's so like, I don't know what you call that. Like,
yeah, it kind of breaks down the structure or the presumed paradigm of what a show. That's what I love. It's almost a musical approach, honestly, of like jamming and bringing people out. Improv.
It's like an encore.
You know? And I mean, it is musical in the sense that he plays the recorder, literally plays the recorder. He'll throw out a one-liner and then he rips a little, like, you know, recorder line. And then, he's so funny and so peculiar. It's like, it's so charming.
He really is just,
you know,
best.
You bring up something I want to ask. Who is the Rickles of our age? Because when I remember Warren Haynes, who's with the Allman Brothers, telling us about when they played the Tonight Show and Rickles was on it. I think it was with Carson, actually. And Alan Woody just looks like this big, scary biker dude, and he's not. But he said Rickles was just firing on Alan Woody, and Woody was a huge fan. He loves it. And when you talked about like when those kind of comedians where they're just slaughtering you and you're like, yes, more, give it to me, please. It's an honor. Who does that? Who's the Rickles of today, do you think?
I'd say it probably is Dave Attell. I mean, if you watch Bumpin' Mics on Netflix, the special with
because they're roasting.
And they bring other people on, you know, other comedians, and I think even like Paul Rudd and a couple of celebrities, actors and stuff. And Dave nobody's quicker than Dave, you know, he's like lightning quick. I mean, he did an episode of my web series, Teacher's Lounge, that my buddy and I co-wrote. You know, I play the music teacher. My buddy is the janitor, and then different comedians come on playing faculty members or what have you. And so Dave played the school photographer for an episode. It was like school picture day. And he was just a machine. Like we just rolled we gave him like, here's some bullet points to hit. Here's the information that we need to get out. But then it was just like a steamroller, like just firing lines. And the other actors, like the other comedians, that was the most we had, like probably, 25 comedians on that one because it was picture day. So we needed other faculty members kind of populating the room. So they, after their things were done, they easily could have left, but everyone stuck around to watch Dave. And he was so funny and so quick and also self-deprecating because he came up to me. He came up to me before we shot the scenes, and he's making every excuse of like, Ted, I'm not an actor. I don't know if this is going to be good. I don't know, I think this has been done before. I don't think I can really do it. I'm like, Dave, you're going to be fine. Trust me. And of course he was brilliant. And, now people still write me like that was my favorite episode. And it was my favorite episode too, because he's just so. It's like watching a genius, really. It really is. It's unbelievable. That one was so hilarious. They were all great, but he's just, and he's the guy too, that if you're at the club and you're done with your sets, you're sitting upstairs, maybe you're punched out for the night or whatever, and you see on the screen that Dave's on stage, you go down and watch. And you hang out. There's like a handful, you always, I love watching it in the moment. I have a hard time watching like specials, just sitting and watching on the couch. Sure. But like in the moment, going and watching Dave, it's just like, it's like watching alchemy. Like it's, you're just always, it's always fun and always surprising. And you laugh in the ways that made you want to be a comedian in the first place, like that kind of with abandon, And to your question, Oteil, I would say, not to plug my own thing, but watch the episode of Dave Attell on Teachers Lounge because it is very Rickles-esque in terms of he's like, one faculty member after another is coming in to get their picture taken by him, and he's roasting everybody just off the top of his head. And the lines that he throws out, he cuts right to the core. Like this one kid walks in and he's kind of, well done up. And he's like, if you're here, who's managing the Benetton, just one after another of like, where did these things come from? What he throws away, other comics would honestly, I would make a deal with the devil to be as funny. One time I was hosting and the crowd stunk, and he went on and he's doing his stuff and 3 jokes in, he's like, Mike, could you open the door and let the energy fairy back in the room? It was just the room was so dead. And I'm like, energy fairy? 4 hours later, I'm like, energy fairy. How unbelievably brilliant.
That's great. Yes, to use everything. Everything's a gift, right? Yeah. Oh God, man. He must have total recall because it's like he'll do every time you see him, it's 10 new minutes of perfectly formed jokes. It's like I've never heard that before, and I've seen him a lot. But it's perfectly formed. So he must have this photographic recall of exactly how it's going to be worded. And exactly what comes next. It really is like watching a genius when you watch Dave. But to circle back to your original question, I really do think Dave is, because he's that elder statesman who does roast people, but does it in a loving way that you want, like you said, you want it to happen. You want to be included, and for him to take a shot at you. Oh yeah. Me, please. Yes. Kill me. Can you kill me? People next? You can see people do kind of perk up, because they'll see him get someone else and they're like, oh, okay, it's safe. He loves us. It's not, See, if I went to see him, I would purposely wear something really fucked up. You know what I mean? And just sit there because I'd be like, it's coming. And he may just skip right over you because of that, though. Well, he almost has this he has this psychic power of assessing a situation and knowing the exact thing to say. Or so if you did wear something deliberately, he might pass over you because he's like, I know what's going on here. He wants it too bad. He's trying too hard. and Ted, I want to, before we, I want to talk to you about your last special and
just it's phenomenal. Congratulations. It's amazing.
Thank you.
I wanted to, let's talk about how you put it together, and it's different from your normal hour special. How did you go about doing it, and what was your thought process on this one?
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, my 5th special, the most recent one, is called Cut Up. And that was kind of a double entendre of, the term cut up, but also the fact that it's cut together from a bunch of different sets at the Cellar and at the Village Underground. Because of the fact that the pandemic hit, this was material that I was kind of sitting on to do my next special.
Yeah.
But then when it looked like this indefinite kind of pause on life, I said to my director, editor, who I've done my last few specials with, Matthew Weiss, I said, let's kind of piece. I have the stuff shot. I've done it at the Cellar, at the Underground. Let's see if we can kind of just piece this together in an interesting way. So that's exactly what he did. And to his credit, like the flow of it is really cool and interesting. And it's almost like you're experiencing the life of a comic too, because it's not one linear set. It's one night, it's another place, different crowds, different locations. So yeah, it wound up being an hour special cut together from, I don't even know how many different sets were used, honestly. I mean, there's probably 3 or 4 that were like the spine of the show, but certain bits you only do one night, or certain bits land on a certain night. So we kind of just culled together the best hour, and that's what Cut Up wound up being. So it is different, and I really like the way it came out.
It really is incredible, and it is great that we're able to kind of reinvent the way these things are made now too.
Yes.
It's interesting that, some people don't think about how different it is doing a city set versus your road hour and things like that. Like, when we're doing sets in the city, it's one after the other of like 15 minutes of like pure gold from a comic before you, and 15 minutes of pure gold from, or 10 minutes of somebody maybe trying something new and it doesn't hit too great. And then you got to go up. Like, we have to follow the tempo of whatever happens, like directly. A tray of glasses that falls could literally throw the whole thing into a weird kilter. So it's nice to see like this is a chunk of sets instead of that one long,
Yeah. And like you said, in a way, I don't know if it's just a comedian thing or if other people feel this way. It's hard to watch a full set in one place now. Like, it's rare that I sit through a full hour now, of even like my favorites. So I think, in essence, like doing the cuts from different places, different shows, it almost is that reset so that you're not kind of like sinking into your chair and sinking into a rhythm. Because even as a comedian, if it's one show, an hour is a long time, but if it's a bunch of different shows, you're naturally resetting where it's cut. And there's a different energy, or I'm wearing a different outfit, or there's a different crowd, or, so it gives you that mental reset. And maybe it's just the way that we're trained now with swiping our phones and
scrolling. Right. People can feel like they're scrolling.
Yeah. I do the scrolling for you.
That's awesome, man. Well, it's been so great hanging with you, and we really appreciate it so much.
Flew by, dude.
You have to come back and do it again soon. Where can everyone find your dates and everything, Ted?
I'm on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, you name it, at Ted Alexandro. And TedAlexandro.com has all my upcoming tour dates. I have a big West Coast tour coming up with Jim Gaffigan starting August 4th. We're up and down the California coast, and we might even be going up to Washington State. I can't remember all the dates, but TedAlexandro.com, you'll see all the upcoming dates there.
Awesome. I love you, Ted. Thanks so much for hanging, man.
Buddy. Yeah, such a pleasure. Thank you, guys. Let's do it again.
Bless. Take care, everyone.